Good morning and welcome to the Universalist Church Online, in which love is the spirit. I am Catherine, one of your Board of Trustee members. We're glad you're here, whether you are joining us from West Hartford, Connecticut, or wherever in the world. We have Zoom fellowship times for our community throughout the week, as well as before and after worship on Sunday. You can find out more information about those gatherings and our other programming by getting onto our mailing list through the contact page on our website. Please do read our electronic communications. They are our best way to stay connected with you. We will have our Zoom fellowship time today at about 10:45 after worship ends. If you are attending through Zoom today, please stay online, even if you need to step away for a short break to join in conversations with one another. We know that online worship is a bit different from being in the sanctuary. We're also discovering that it has its own opportunities like this. Take a moment to wave hello to everyone online. And now I invite you to take a moment to turn off your email and other apps, put the keyboard away, and settle in for worship.
That will run maybe.
Good morning, this first Sunday of August. And as I light our chalice this Sunday, I ask you to please join me in saying our covenant together, which is in the chat box as well as in the description in Zoom. Love is the spirit of this church, and service is its law. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another.
Our time for all ages today will be a story that is an inclusive and non-binary adaptation of the book When God Gave Us Words by Sandy Sasso. One day, the creative force decided to give words to humankind. But the Spirits Collective that always supported this creative force objected. They said, humankind will not know what to do with the words. Words should only belong to our collective. But the creative force replied, perhaps all the humans will make something beautiful with the words. Oh, nothing could be more wonderful than what we do with the words, the Spirits Collective insisted. Those humans will just mess it up. But the creative force was intent on hearing words being spoken and shared by all humans. So they filled the Spirits Collective sacks with words and sent them to Earth to spread those words. Some sacks held long and difficult words like omniscient and anti-disestablishmentarianism. The Spirits Collective frowned. Humans will never understand the meanings of these words. And it was so. Because of the long, difficult words, dictionaries were created. In other sacks, the creative force put silly words like gibberish and goop and gosh. In another sack, the creative force placed all words that were hard to spell, like hors d'oeuvres. The humans will never know how to spell these words, noted the Spirits Collective. And it was so. Because of the hard to spell words, the creative force created spelling lists. When the Spirits Collective returned from spreading all the words from their sacks, they sat around the creative force and listened. It took some time for the humans to get accustomed to using words. Slowly, they let each word form in their mouths. Carefully, they added one word to another until they made sentences. When they got used to the words, they talked and talked and talked and talked and talked and talked some more until the Spirits Collective shouted, "Enough!" But this creative force wanted to hear more. Then the humans twisted and turned words and made lies. They rolled the words in the wet earth until they were covered with mud and created curses. The humans mixed words with sharp thorns and gossip was born. The Spirits Collective shouted, "Stop! What a mess humans are making of our precious words." The creative force was about to send the Spirits Collective back to Earth to take back all the words when they heard a new sound. The humans stirred soft music into words and sang lullabies. Words were mixed with dance and poetry was born. Humans joined laughter to words and told jokes. The Spirits Collective smiled and said to the creative force, some of these jokes are pretty funny, and some were simply silly. And it was so. For the simply silly jokes, the creative force designed groans. And for the truly funny jokes, the creative force and the Spirits Collective just laughed. Humans mixed words with midnight and wrote mysteries. When the Spirits Collective listened to the mysteries, their lovely bodies trembled. Humans wove longing and thanksgiving and hope into words and offered prayer. Imagination and words were joined together and there were stories. The Spirits Collective listened and were enchanted. The creative force asked the Spirits Collective, after all these new sounds that they had listened to, if they still wanted to gather up the words and bring them back only for their use. The Spirits Collective remembered the lies and the curses and the gossip. Nevertheless, they did not want to take back the words. They loved the songs and poetry. They giggled at the jokes, and they cried during the prayers. We must hear the end of the stories the humans are telling, the Spirits Collective pleaded. And it was so. Humans were allowed to keep the gift of words for the sake of stories.
Yesterday, or actually a few days ago now, I spent part of my day having the privilege of listening to a story couched in the funeral of Representative John Robert Lewis. Reverend Dr. Bernice King, Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King's youngest daughter, offered the prayer for all peoples during that funeral service. And I'd like to share part of that today as the opening to our pastoral prayer. It speaks loudly to how words can uplift us, even in the moments of national loss. Thank you to Dr. Bernice King for these sacred words. Great and mighty God, creator of all of us and sustainer of all things, we invoke you on this morning. We welcome you, Holy Spirit, into this place that we share. We humbly look to you in this hour for wisdom and strength and comfort as we celebrate the homecoming of your son and servant, Congressman John Lewis. Grant us the capacity to follow the example to fight injustice without bitterness and hostility, but with a righteous indignation. Dear God, grant us to get into good trouble until white supremacy around the world is uprooted in all of our policies, and that our portion, God, to get into good trouble until this nation truly becomes a compassionate nation. A nation, Daddy said, could only be compassionate. Grant us finally, Father God, with the double portion to get into good trouble until love becomes the way we live, the way we lead, the way we legislate, and until justice rolls down like waters and righteousness like a mighty stream. May we also this morning, in light of these words and using our own, call upon one another to hold in our thoughts and prayers Joyce, who lost her sister this morning at about 2:48 a.m. Also, please hold in your prayers Julio Morales, who will be undergoing surgery this day for his back and some immediate nerve damage. Please finally hold in your prayers all of those in our congregation who feel isolated in their rooms, in their homes, in their assisted living locations, as we continue to support one another during this pandemic. Now, let us take a time in stillness together. The ways in which we support our community will shift and change through this waiting time. We have sent an email to members and pledgers about making your donations electronically. Right now, you can use the donate button on our website to support the work that we do for all of us. And that link is now in our chat box as well. It can also be found on our congregation website. We are grateful, very grateful, for all the ways in which you support one another. Phone calls, snail mail, FaceTime, Zoom meetings, getting groceries or medications for those who need them, and preparing for the day when we can say this pandemic crisis is history. Please join me now in singing our doxology together. The words are in the chat box.
Our first reading this morning is The Power of Spoken Words by Dr. Hine Sahed. Yehuda Berg wrote, "Words are singularly the most powerful force available to humanity. We can choose to use this force constructively with words of encouragement or destructively using words of despair. Words have energy and power with the ability to help, to heal, to hinder, to hurt, to harm, to humiliate, and to humble. Considering the powerful force of the words we utter, we must discipline ourselves to speak in a way that conveys respect, gentleness, and humility. One of the clearest signs of a moral life is right speech. Perfecting our speech is one of the keystones of mature people. Before speaking, take a few moments to contemplate what you will say and how you will say it, while considering the impact they will have on the listeners. Be kind to all and speak words that are beacons of inspiration, enthusiasm, and encouragement to all. Kind and sweet words are always music to the ears of the listeners. When we speak, we should speak with mindfulness in a way to solidify peace and compassion in our characters. Not only do our words matter, but also the tone which we use has a huge impact. There are certain rules that should guide all our communications with others. Always speak the truth, avoid exaggerations, be consistent in what you're saying. Don't use double standards in addressing people. Don't use your words to manipulate others. And most importantly, do not use words to insult or belittle anyone. Thich Nhat Hanh, a contemporary Buddhist monk and global peace worker and writer, in his book, Being Peace, says, speaking honestly in any negotiation between individuals or groups is necessary. Speaking the truth in a loving way is also necessary. Han recommends only loving speech, even when we're communicating with our differences and about our differences and disagreements. We must be lovingly honest. We must discipline ourselves to speak in a manner that conveys respect, gentleness, and humility. Our second reading today is from Caring for Words in a Culture of Lies by Marilyn McIntyre. I was talking recently about stewardship of resources with a young man who's hoping to make a career in environmental law. We considered the fate of water, soil, animal and plant species, and food systems. In the wake of that invigorating conversation, I found myself musing on the similar problems that beset another precious shared resource: words. Like any life-sustaining resource, language can be depleted, polluted, contaminated, eroded, and filled with artificial stimulants. Like any other resource, it needs the protection of those who recognize its value and commit themselves to good stewardship. Caring for language is a moral issue. Caring for another is not entirely separable from caring about words. Words are entrusted to us as equipment for our life together to help us survive, guide, and nourish one another. We need to take the metaphor of nourishment seriously in choosing what we feed on in our hearts and in seeking to make our conversation with each other life-giving. To call upon another analogy, if language is to retain its power to nourish and sustain our common life, we have to care for it in something like the way good farmers care for the life of the soil, knowing nothing worth eating can be grown in soil that has been used up, over-fertilized, or exposed to too many toxic chemicals. The comparison, I believe, is pertinent, timely, and precise, and urgent. The sheer availability of words, written, spoken, sung, is historically unprecedented. Stewardship of such riches is a weighty responsibility, perhaps never more so than now, because as avenues for the spoken and written word abound, so do the varieties of language abuse. The very scope of English makes it a ready instrument of empire. It bears within it a highly developed discourse of justification for colonialism and domination that can't be eradicated by legislation or policy, but needs to be addressed at the level of language itself. The stories we tell ourselves about ourselves, the euphemisms in which we cloak our greed, the biases that favor the point of view of the privileged. Those of us who minister to each other need to focus on the word, the words, more explicitly, intentionally, and caringly. This is necessary and urgent activism to resist newspeak, to insist on precision and clarity, to commend conversation itself, noticing how things are put, noting what is being left out or subverted, takes an active habit of mind.
Thank you so much, Ted. If you haven't, by the way, read the background to the synthesizer in the e-news, take the time to do that, because Ted explains how the differences on the synthesizer operate. All of us have been impacted by life as it continues to unfold around us day by day. Since I last shared with you in May, which seems like bazillion years ago, so much has shifted and changed due to the pandemic. We have all experienced a large and long series of heightened awarenesses. These awarenesses have been brought on by Black Lives Matter protests and chalk signs being painted on our streets and hung in our neighborhoods. The ever-present political backdrop that calls us to be aware of our civic responsibility to vote this fall. The continual life and death cycle of so many COVID-19 cases. And this immediate past week, the life and death of Representative John Robert Lewis, a stalwart example of dedicated leadership. Each one of us here today are left standing amidst it all, or sitting, as the case may be this morning. And within that embrace of this confluence of realities, the simplest things of life speak to us. And they speak to us in the language that we have, which is made of words. I don't know about you these days, but I am often tongue-tied. I have no words for what I hear on my radio as I drive down to the hospital. And I have no words for what I see across the television screen. And I have no words for the encounters I experience as I stand in the line in the grocery store, where someone just has to have that pack of gum right now, in this instant moment. Or sit in my car at the bank when someone gets out of the front seat and yells across the parking lot because they need something from the person who is sitting in the car, but the other one who is across the way. The juxtaposition of the images of fatigue-wearing soldiers in Portland and the meditative slides and music that grace the oncology room where I work just heighten the complexity and dissonances that are part of my days, especially these days. In this morning's Time for All Ages, read so beautifully by Jennifer Madison, the creative force and the Spirits Collective decided not to take back the words from humankind because they love the stories we share with one another. The words we have been given and give to each other build those stories, even when we feel we don't have the right words. One of the lessons that my pastoral ministry has taught me over the years is that actual words, compassionate words, even gentle words, the words of humility that Thich Nhat Hanh referred to, are not always what is needed. Rather, no words are often more profound and truly much more adequate. In researching the word inadequate, I found it ironic that it was first used in 1787, the very year our United States Constitution was written. That this word inadequate is tied to the Latin word adequate, which meant to make equal. I found it a marvelous coincidence that as I was building the sermon about the non-equality of words, that we were also burying a mighty leader who built his life on fighting for equality and used his words abundantly, but not superficially, ever. It struck me, as part of the complexity and dissonance of life, that in framing the inadequacy of words, I discovered once again the depth that words can and do provide for each and every one of us. My preparations for today made me deeply aware of the significance of words. Words like those we have heard over the past weeks in sermons: resilience, penetrating silence, goofy, hear us, witness, silly, holy ground, repair, restoration, remember, and good trouble. It also has made me very aware of the tone with which words are spoken and shared, the space they occupy or create, the mystery that they enfold and express. And yet, the lack of words, our inadequacy and our inability to find just the right word when we need it, also brings about a set of different awarenesses. How can we capture in a single word, or even just a few words, the feeling that courses through each one of us as we listen each Sunday to Ted's music and his multiple variations of sharing it? What word would you choose to really capture all that emerges as you watch the sunrise or set in a sky of blue spattered with wispy clouds? What word or words would you select to describe a photo of over 75 babies in a natal ward in Florida who have COVID, who aren't even a year old? Or words for the refrigeration trucks that sit outside hospital emergency rooms holding over 225 cadavers of people who died of COVID in a single day in Florida? And what are the appropriate words to describe the smile and tears that come across a young child's face as she is reunited with her mother at the border wall after months of being in a cage? It is, I believe, one of the many paradoxes of being human that we have words, and we, just as frequently, don't have them. Perhaps that spirit collective came down and picked up some words from time to time that we don't know about. But that is why I love these words from our reading this morning. Caring for language is a moral issue. Caring for one another is not entirely separable from caring for words. Words are entrusted to us as equipment for our life together, to help us survive, guide, and nourish one another. We need to take the metaphor of nourishment seriously in choosing what we feed on in our hearts, and in seeking to make our conversation with each other life-giving. Words are moral. They equip us to feed one another. They help us nourish one another. It has been my experience that the vulnerability that comes with the inadequacy of words can further our abilities to truly provide life to one another. Sometimes, as our reading noted, words are singularly the most powerful force available to humanity. However, at other times, in moments when everything about us seems way overwhelming and just too much, we can reach out and look over into one another's eyes, over our masks, and not speak a single word, and yet speak volumes. We can connect our inner spirits with one another's through wordlessness. It is in these moments where our inadequacy with words stretches us further into our humanity and allows each one of us to touch our mysterious and magnificent humanness. These are the moments when I can truly feel the words, "I see you," without speaking them. This first Sunday of August, I ask that our inadequacy with words provide us with the same energy and power that our words can provide. May the paradox of words and sometimes the simple inadequacy of those very same words allow us always to experience the depth of our humanity, and that depth in our week ahead. May it be so, and blessed be. Please join me now in saying our unison benediction. It's found in your chat box below. Engage with the world in peace. Have courage. Hold on to what is good. Return to no person evil for evil. Strengthen the faint-hearted. Support the weak. Help the suffering. Honor all beings.